I'm 102 years old and I am still living in my own home. My 4 closest friends are not. 3 of them are dead. One is in a memory care unit in Ohio and does not remember my name. Not because I was lucky, not because my body was stronger than theirs, because I watched all 4 of them, one at a time, for 30 years, and I learned exactly what each of them did that I refused to do. And if you are honest with yourself, you are probably doing at least 2 of the 4 things right now. You will not notice. The 4 women I watched did not notice either. They were all sharper than me. They were all healthier than me at 70. They were all wealthier than me at 75. And every single one of them ended up somewhere they never planned to be because of 4 specific choices that looked like nothing at the time. I want to tell you all 4, one friend for each. The first friend was Helen. She handed her checkbook to her son at 71. Helen was a school principal for 38 years. She had managed budgets, payroll, building maintenance, and 1,200 students a year. She was the most competent woman I have ever known. When her husband died, her son offered to help with the bills. Just for a few months, he said, just until the dust settled. She agreed. She was grieving. She was tired. The offer was kind. She said yes. Within 6 months, her son was paying every bill in her house. Within a year, he had her sign a financial power of attorney just in case. Within 3 years, Helen could not have told you how much money she had, where it was, or what she was paying for her electricity. The day she lost her independence was not the day she fell. The day she lost her independence was the Tuesday in 1994, when she handed her son the checkbook. Everything else, the move to assisted living at 79, the slow erosion of her say in her own life, came from that one Tuesday. I am 102 years old. I pay every bill in this house. I read every statement. I know exactly how much is in every account I own. My grandson has offered to help. I have said no for 30 years. A woman who does not know her own money is a woman whose money is no longer hers. The second friend was Dolores. She let her daughter throw away the things she didn't need anymore at 74. Dolores had collected things her whole life: books, letters, a small collection of porcelain birds her mother had given her in 1953, a drawer full of recipes in her own handwriting, photographs of people her children had never met. Her daughter, who lived with her after Dolores's husband died, suggested a deep cleaning, just to make the house safer, just to clear walking paths, just to bring some calm to the chaos. Dolores agreed. She had been told for years that she had too much stuff. I went to visit Dolores 6 weeks after the cleaning. She walked me through her own house with the expression of a woman in a hotel room. The porcelain birds were gone. The letters were gone. The handwritten recipes had been scanned to the computer, which meant in practice that Dolores would never see them again, because Dolores did not use a computer. She told me very quietly in her kitchen, "I do not remember being who I was anymore. I have nothing in this house to remind me." She moved into assisted living 2 years later. The decision was not hard for her. The house had stopped being a home the day the porcelain birds left. I am 102 years old. I have not thrown away a meaningful object in 30 years. The shelves in my living room are full of things only I understand. They are the proof of who I have been. The day someone clears them, I will be a woman with no past. And a woman with no past is a woman with no fight left to stay anywhere. A house emptied of meaning is a house you will not defend. The third friend was Marjorie. She agreed to just one little fall censor at 76. This is the most subtle of the four, and the one I argue about most often. Marjorie had not fallen. She was healthy. Her daughter, who lived in another state and worried constantly, bought her a censor for her birthday, a small device worn around the neck. The daughter explained that it was for peace of mind. Marjorie wore it to please her. Within a year, the daughter had added a second censor in the bathroom. Within 2 years, there were 3 cameras in the house. Within 4, Marjorie's daughter had remote access to a system that monitored Marjorie's movement, sleep patterns, and time spent in each room. Marjorie had not realized when she put on that first necklace that she had agreed to be observed for the rest of her life. And once you are observed, you are no longer trusted. Once you are not trusted, every small misstep becomes evidence. The day Marjorie left a pot on the stove for 20 minutes too long, her daughter was on a plane the same evening with brochures. Marjorie went into assisted living at 82. The brochures had been ready for 3 years. The censors had been collecting the proof. I am 102 years old. I have no censors in this house. I have no cameras. I have a telephone, and I use it. My family knows where I am because I call them. They have not asked for monitoring devices because I have told them gently and clearly that the day I am observed is the day I am no longer free. A woman who agrees to be watched has agreed, without knowing it, to be judged. The fourth friend was Edna. She started saying, "I don't drive at night anymore" at 73. Edna's eyes were fine. Her reflexes were fine. Her doctor had cleared her for driving with no restrictions. But her son-in-law had read an article about elderly drivers and night vision. He mentioned it once at dinner. He mentioned it again at Christmas. By the third mention, Edna had begun to say, almost without noticing, "Well, I don't really drive at night anymore." It was not true at first. It was a polite thing to say to make her son-in-law feel better. Within 6 months, it had become true, because she had stopped doing it. Within a year, she had stopped driving at dusk. Within 2, she had stopped driving in the rain. Within 5, she had stopped driving entirely. She had not lost the ability to drive. She had talked herself out of it, one small concession at a time, to make her family less anxious. The day a woman gives up driving is the day her world begins to shrink. The grocery store gets further. The doctor gets further. The friend across town becomes unreachable. The world closes in slowly, and the woman becomes dependent on whoever is willing to drive her, which is almost never as often as she would like. Edna moved into assisted living at 81. The car had been gone for 3 years. By the end, she had not been outside her own block in a season. I am 102 years old. I drove myself to the grocery store last Tuesday. I will drive myself again next Tuesday. The day I cannot pass the driving test my private instructor gives me every spring, I will stop. Until that day, I drive. 4 friends, 4 choices. 1 Tuesday with a checkbook. 1 spring with a daughter clearing the house. one birthday with a censor, one Christmas with a worried son-in-law. None of them looked like the moment. All of them were the moment. You are probably in the middle of at least one of these right now. Someone in your family has offered to help with the bills. Someone has suggested a deep clean. Someone has bought you a device. Someone has hinted that maybe you should not be driving at night. The offer is kind. The person loves you. And every single one of these offers, if you accept it without thinking very carefully, is the first day of the road that ends in a room you did not choose. A nursing home does not begin with a fall. It begins with the 4 small offers of help that a woman accepts without understanding what she is handing away. I'll see you in the next one.